We got just 1 week left until I'm halfway through this 100-day challenge. So I'm spending the next week focusing entirely on the product, and every day I'm going to try to build a major new feature and demo it in these daily videos. If you're new here, the product I'm working on is VibeScan. It helps non-technical founders ship their code with confidence by scanning it for security, performance, and code quality issues. Over the last few days, I've been overhauling the core system of how these scans are being done. Previously, I was relying entirely on static analysis tools that would scan the code and look for particular patterns in that code. But what I realized is that these tools are very rigid, and I didn't have a lot of control over what I was looking for. And the result was that they were often missing a lot of key problems, but they were also generating a huge number of false positives, which then I would have to figure out how to filter out. I've switched to a more AI-driven approach that looks through those files and looks for specific issues and then goes through a series of different prompts and different AI models to identify what actually matters, what is false positive, and so on. So the result of all that work is that I now have the security scanning working on that new architecture. And we can take a look at the difference here. So I just ran this scan for DragonRoll, and it identified 10 issues. With my previous approach, when I ran the scan on this repository, it found almost 250 issues, but it was filled with stuff like this, where I have supposedly a password in just this port handling documentation. And if we take a closer look at that, it's obviously just an example in this documentation file. So my new system was able to identify that as a false positive and filter that out. However, it did identify an actual hard-coded password in a different place in this repository, which, yes, this is a simple password, but it is hard-coded. But I would argue that this is a much more legitimate finding. And we have some other identified issues like this unsafe.env file update, which I agree, this is a little bit of a sketchy way of doing this, but this is a type of finding that the previous approach would have never found because it's not something that's really easy to scan for from a pattern-based perspective. And again, if we look at the old approach, there were so many false positives like finding passwords supposedly in package.json, and then every time I would use console.log, it would identify that as a potential issue. So the new approach feels a lot more targeted, and I have a lot more control over the specific findings we find and how we surface them. The other cool thing about this new approach is that incremental scans are going to be much faster now because I have a really smart system for caching results. So it's only going to need to scan the files that have changed since your last scan. So I'm feeling really good about it. Now it's just a matter of fine-tuning the approach to make sure that, again, we balance the correct identification of issues with the false positives. And then I'm going to be able to turn it on for code quality and performance issues as well. So we'll see if I can get that done by tomorrow, and I'll show you a new demo. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you then. Take care.